Today on Locked On Rockies, there's still some good free agent arms out there. Will the Colorado Rockies be involved in any of those? Let's be honest.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 27th day of December in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot. That's what we do around here each and every day is talk about the Colorado Rockies, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by letting me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Give me your hot takes, your Rockies thoughts, all that good stuff. Your subscription to the show is the best way to help the show grow. If you can click that subscribe button, click that like button, you really, really do help the show. Really, really do appreciate it. I'm Paul Holden. I am your Rockies fan extraordinaire. I've been following this team my entire life and bringing you your daily Rockies talk now for over 3 seasons. And before we dive into everything today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We're going to talk pitching today. We're going to talk pitching today because there's still plenty of free agents out there that could help the Colorado Rockies. Now, the question is, are the Rockies going to be engaged in any of these talks? Are the Rockies going to be able to convince these players to come and pitch for them? Because here's the deal. If you're the Rockies, or at least if the way I feel about the Rockies, you can be excited and you can be confident about your young core. You know what? I really am not going to sit here and, one, be that surprised, and two, be overly upset if the Rockies trot out the same lineup basically on the field as they did at the end of the year. There's problems with it. There's growing pains that are going to come with it. But at the same time, if you really want to see what you have, especially under the control of the young guys that you have in terms of contracts and players, and a myriad of other things, it's fine. Is it the best lineup in baseball? No. Is it going to take down the Dodgers? No. But it's fine. It's interesting. The Rockies can see where they're at. They can see what veterans they're going to need that they can build with, what veterans they can maybe move on from, where they're going to have to reevaluate come the trade deadline and the end of next season. But if they really want to show us something, if they really want to show that they're changing the reputation of the Rockies, that they're building up, that they're making this team a bigger force to be reckoned with, not only in the NL West, but in all of baseball, there's no excuse. You have to bring in arms. You have to. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you convince, but there's still too many major league ready arms that can help you right now. And you can afford to pay them. Again, we talked yesterday about the money situation. And yes, there could be some hamstring and limits from the TV deal and XYZ. I get that. But again, I don't think the Rockies find themselves in the same position as these other teams. Remember, this is a Rockies team that was right in the middle of the pack when it comes to payroll last year, and a higher payroll than some playoff teams last year, by a few playoff teams last year. So if you're willing to spend money, the Rockies being a team willing to spend money in certain instances, I'm not saying you got to throw a 10-year, $500 million deal at someone, but you need to use money, and you need to use that as a little bit of a leverage to add in and entice these players to come, and while also doing the proper evaluation. Because I'll sit here and say it, I don't think the Rockies should get Blake Snell. I think Blake Snell is not what you're looking for when it comes to if you're going to spend a big money deal, or you're going to spend some good cheddar on a pitcher. It can't be a guy that walks a lot of people. I mean, even with the low ERA, but you can't have a guy that's going to give you free opportunities. It's not going to work at Coors Field. It's simply put, it ain't going to work. I know Snell's got the experience of pitching at Coors Field because he's been a Padre, but still, I mean, that's where I hesitate. But just going on the list here from best remaining free agents available here from MLB.com. Top arms still available. Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Shota Imahana, Marcus Stroman, Lucas Giolito. Like, these are the type of players that change and dominate and will drastically change the outlook of your pitching staff. And especially when I'm looking at something like a Jordan Montgomery, someone who, one, left-hander, and two, someone that has bounced around a little bit and has shown in multiple environments that he can handle it. I want to read here from breaking down the best free agents still available, Thomas Harrigan and Brian Murphy on MLB.com. Montgomery provided a huge lift to the Rangers after coming over from St. Louis at the trade deadline. He registered a 2.83 ERA across 98 and two-thirds innings, postseason included, to help Texas capture its first World Series championship. Imahana doesn't have Yamamoto's ceiling, but the 30-year-old profiles as a solid number 2 or number 3 starter. In 2023, he had a career-best 10.6 K through 9 rate and walked only 24 batters through 148 innings for the Yokohama Dene Bay Stars. Like, that's, I mean, and that's another thing that's frustrating in this whole thing. It's so lame that the Rockies are never tied to these dope for international free agents. It's awful. Leading back to one of the big frustrations I have with the reputation of this team, to never even be able to be mentioned as one of these teams that's going out there into Japan, into Korea, and bringing players and being interested in those players. Are you kidding me? I know it's Japan and stuff, but 10.6 strikeout per 9 rate and walked only 24 batters through 148 innings. That's a Rockies pitcher, or at least one that you put in your rotation. The Rockies need a strikeout guy. The Rockies need someone that can hit the zone, challenge the zone, and make batters miss, especially if you can get some of these guys and they'll be your front of the line starter. They get that front of the line starter because it doesn't matter. If you sign any of those names, odds are they're your number one. Without a doubt, they're your number one. But the Rockies themselves just haven't been able to get into these conversations. And it's incredibly disheartening. Because if you're going to be a team that spends $170 million as your payroll, if you're going to be a team that's right in the middle of the pack when it comes to payroll, you got to be willing to spend again. If you're going to go out and get Chris Bryant for that deal, you need to be able to go out and get a pitcher. And I'm not saying, I don't think huge long-term deals are the thing, but if you can get these pitchers for a 3-year deal, if you can sign a pitcher and say, hey, next year we're going to use it as, it's going to be a tough one, but we're going to use it as get used to Coors Field, get acclimated, get used to pitching here, see what it's like, and then we go from there. And then the next 2 years on that contract, you build around that. How much more excited do you get about the Rockies pitching staff if they add one of those names? Even if it is Marcus Stroman or Giolito. Let's go back to the piece here. This past season was a tale of two halves for Stroman and Giolito. After a stellar first few months, both veterans faltered in the second half. Stroman, who earned his second All-Star selection at a 9.11 ERA in July before missing 6 weeks due to hip and rib injuries. Giolito served up 20 home runs over his 12 final starts, split evenly with the Angels and Guardians. Yet he is just a few years removed from a string of seasons in which he earned Cy Young votes. Now, Stroman's got to opt out, I believe, or he might have already opted out. I can't remember. But, again, those are pitchers that take a risk on, take a chance on. They're both veterans on the other side. They can't own – their name is going to command a lot of money. But if they're struggling, especially in the second half of the season, you should be able to bring them in. You need a solid veteran top-of-the-line starter to mix in with this rotation. I know Austin Gomber and Kyle Freeland are your vets, but they would benefit from bringing in a top-level pitcher, just like the Rockies would. And that's not even all. The Rockies still could get some middle-of-the-rotation guys that will still be top-of-the-line rotation guys for the Rockies. And we're going to talk about them coming up, as well as some notes that Purple Row has about Cal Quantrill and what the Rockies got in that deal. We're going to talk about all that and more coming up in segment number 2. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook, and they got you covered all postseason and the rest of the regular season long with the NFL action. Is pretty crazy to say. Playoffs for football are right around the corner. and FanDuel's got you covered. America's number one sportsbook's offering a new offer at FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. I know the Broncos didn't help you out last weekend, but maybe you still believe big in their very, very slim playoff hopes in their last 2 games of the year against the Chargers and the Raiders. Who knows what may happen? And if they win, you can get $150 in bonus bets at FanDuel when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon for all the action this NFL regular season and postseason. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we thank you for being part of the show and leaving your comments and subscribing, liking the videos, all that good stuff. Really, really great way to help the show grow and help me here as we continue on this journey. All right, we've been talking about the Rockies really should go out and make a splash. I think if the Rockies added Jordan Montgomery to their team, they would be really, they'd be adding someone that really could help them and really could be benefiting them as someone that's bounced around a little bit, has experienced what it's like to pitch in multiple environments. I think he can handle it. I really, really do. But here's some mid-rotation options listed from MLB.com. This is from Christmas Eve, too, so I don't think any of these have signed. But right-handed pitcher Frankie Montas, Hyunjin Ryu, Michael Lorenza, Sean Manaea, Mike Clevenger, Alex Wood, James Paxton. It's something, again, none of those guys are dominant at this point, but who knows what they can do. And above all, they add depth and they add experience and they add, some namesake. And some of them, in the case of Hyunjin Ryu, I mean, he's pitched he was on the Dodgers for years. He knows what it's like to pitch for in Coors Field, and there's just too many options out there. There really are. Above all, like when I see this and when I see all these names available, there's far too many of them out there for the Rockies to not be connected to a single one of them. That's the problem. The Coors Field curse, the Rockies narrative, the Rockies reputation has removed them from the conversation of any pitcher in the free agent market this offseason. Have you seen a single report of the Rockies being interested or connected to any of these starting pitchers? No. And that's a problem. That's a tremendous problem that the Rockies can't afford to continue to go through year after year after year after year. When we talk about the reputation problems, when we talk about the issues of this front office, this gets in the way of building up your team to make it better. I know during the playoffs, they built the super bullpen. Bullpens are different too. Relief pitchers are different as well. If the Rockies really want to change their fate, if the Rockies really want to change the narrative about their team, if the Rockies really want to take the next step, they have to be in on deals for pitchers of this caliber. They have to be willing to go in there, figure out what they need to do, and get a deal done with some of these guys. Even if it is a risk, even if it is hoping for a bounce back. Me personally, I think the Rockies should be more willing to strike while the iron's hot, while these pitchers are coming off of solid seasons. Enough of the rehab or the rehabilitation or the starters that have reached their limit with other teams and been DFA'd, and they just go out and waiver claim. Heck, there's probably some interesting pitchers and stuff still are available on the waiver right now. All in all, there's still plenty of pitching talent out there. There's plenty of pitchers out there that will make the Colorado Rockies a better baseball team. The fact of the matter is, I don't think the Rockies are going to do enough to really even entertain the idea of getting some of these arms. I don't even know if the Rockies have even entertained the idea of going after Montgomery. I don't know if the Rockies have even entertained the idea of looking at these international pitchers. Why? Because I haven't heard from the team. I haven't heard a peep from the team. We heard 1 or 2 comments from Bill Schmidt at the winter meetings about adding a bench player and a catcher and blah, 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 blah. Okay. Snoozeville. Boring, boring, boring. And I really don't believe that just by standing pat, just by sitting here, means that the Rockies can continue to just fully believe in their core and in their plan. The Rangers did not just flip around. They had their bad season. They spent the money, went through a tough season, spent a little bit more money, and then got to the World Series. You're going to have to allow yourself time. This is the year you need to convince a high-level pitcher to come to your team to help turn things around. But I have no confidence, no faith in this Rockies front office getting that deal done. I really don't. I am just as about down on the Rockies as an organization in front office and management team as I am on their on the field record performance. I think there's too many issues that are going to get in the way of this Rockies team from actually rebuilding the right way and building themselves up and bolstering their pitching staff. Because I really do see a future where, well, hey, you know, Cal Quantrill panned out and Freeland and Gomber, they're hanging in there, and we're getting Senza and Marquez back. We're just riding with that. Spoiler, the main core of Freeland, Senza, and Marquez wasn't good enough in the playoffs in the past when they were younger and closer to their primes. What's going to be different after all the surgeries, after all the changes, after all the dips and the changes in their pitching style? The Rockies are simply banking too much on the return of these pitchers. They need to be thinking more ahead. They need to be thinking what they can do. But when you sign those extensions of those pitchers, it limits you. But for the Rockies to just wait for them and then to trot out the same rotation, added in Cal Quantrill, that's not going to move the needle. That's not going to make the Rockies division contenders. That's not going to make the Rockies a playoff team. Unless both Senzatella and Marquez bounce back and are able to pitch at elite levels, which I think Marquez still can, or at least a middle of the rotation type of guy, that's fine. But after these injuries, after everything that we've seen of these guys, after everything we've experienced with pitching in Colorado, I think it's inexcusable for this team not to be more engaged and more interacting and more active on the free agent pitcher market. I think that is a serious misstep by this team. And again, I'm not saying give them the 10-year, $300 million deals. I'm not saying that. I'm saying 3 years. I'm saying 2-year deals. I'm saying do something within the realm where you pay a little extra cheddar for these guys, which entices them to come, and they come and they pitch for 3 years. And then you figure out what you got from there. This Rockies team is going to get crushed in the first half of the season if they don't do anything to handle this pitching. And right now, I don't have any confidence in them doing that. I don't know, just where I'm at. All right, Renee Descartes writes over here about Cal Quantrill here, and I'm not going to read the full piece, but just to give you some insight of what the Rockies, why the Rockies were looking at him, what the Rockies were looking for, and why they were making this move. Why did the Rockies trade for Quantrill? Clearly, they need pitching, but the Rockies also believe Quantrill, who showed promise early in his career but has since struggles, can return to form. In his first full season as a starter, Quantrill earned a 2.89 ERA by making pitches. They have a video by making pitches like these. By 2022, he saw some deterioration in his numbers, 3.38 ERA. Things got worse in 2023 when a 5.24 ERA in 99 2/3 innings pitched with 58 earned runs. Quantrill's situation was not helped by recurring shoulder inflammation. As Rockies general manager Bill Schmidt told Patrick Saunders immediately following the trade, he had some shoulder problems last season, but if you look at his last 6 starts, that was the best he was all year. He was pretty good, and that showed us he was healthy. Quantrill also chalks his 2023 season up to injuries, explaining to Saunders, I think I probably tried to battle through the soreness a little bit longer than I should have last year, but the rest got me where I needed to be. I think I finished the season strong. I'm having a good offseason, and I'm excited to put together a complete season. That's fine. I mean, I like what it seems. I like the possibilities. I like that this was a low level move. I think that this is intriguing. I mean, I really do think that Cal can bring some benefit, especially if the Rockies do believe he can get back to his old form. He's got 4 pitches, and which is always a good sign. True changeup, split of change, cutter, slider. Really, I mean, those are all interesting pitch mixes and good things to have for starters. So there's more to read from that Cal Quantrill. I like this move. I think this is a solid type of move the Rockies need to do to build out the rest of the rotation. I just don't think it's necessarily enough in the big picture. I don't think the Rockies not having a bona fide ace is a big problem. German Marquez was ace level good in the playoff years. I stand by that. Until the Rockies are able to get a pitcher that reaches all-star status, someone that you can look at and have the ace conversation, they're going to struggle. Overall, they're going to struggle because, again, how many times do we have to hope that they come to Colorado and they bounce back? Have to hope that they stay healthy. Have to hope this. It's a good way. It's a good way to add depth. It's a good way to bring pitchers into the mix. But I think one of the best things the Rockies can do, and one of the biggest changes in their philosophy that we'd ever see, is if this team goes out and gets a legit starting pitcher. Goes out and gets the deal done for someone to come and pitch for them at Colorado. But I don't think they're going to be able to do that until they can show that they can win and show that they have an offense to back up these players. I think the free agency market next year can be a little bit more intriguing if the Rockies go out and say, look at this defense we have behind you at Coors Field. If the defense is as good as we think it can be, that could be an interesting selling point for pitchers next season. But I'm not going to hold my breath and think and hope the Rockies go out and get any of these big names, or even in any of these middle inning or middle of the rotation guys. Doing a little word combo there. Guys, like we talked about, I just don't see it happening. And my faith level is just so low in the organization as a whole. So we'll see. All right, let's finish out the show with who's going to have the better 2024, Kyle Freeland or Austin Gomber. Let's do that coming up in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. You can also find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. Let me know what your thoughts are when it comes to the Colorado Rockies, and your subscription to the Locked On Rockies podcast on YouTube is the best way to help the show grow. Really, really do appreciate it. Now, just a little bit of an interesting comparison here, and when we're looking at two of the most important pieces. I mean, there's no way around it. The fact of the matter is, the Rockies season is going to come down to, at least in the beginning of the season, is going to come down to the performances of Kyle Freeland and Austin Gomber. Kyle Freeland, I am confident in. We kind of know what we're going to get for Kyle Freeland. We know the type of we know where he's at. We know the caliber. We know that he's able to. We know we got the velocity concerns. We got the other concerns, and his projections are looking pretty similar to next year. Austin Gomber looking pretty much the same. Again, looking pretty similar to where he was this year at these early projections, with a dip in or with an increase in strikeouts from him, which would be great. But the problem is with both of these guys, the home runs are going to be a problem. Both of them are projected to give up over 20 home runs each. But I think Kyle Freeland's going to have the better. I think Kyle Freeland's going to really, if I'm going to just go and put in the homer and just hope for nothing but the positives, I think Kyle Freeland is going to really go in here and cement his role amongst Rockies pitching legacy. He's now been pitching for 7 years with the Colorado Rockies. And, while we haven't seen that 2018 Kyle Freeland in a long time, we've kind of seen the same type of Kyle for a bit here outside of the massive increase in home runs last year. I think he's got the potential. I think he's someone that really understands where he pitches, really understands his environment, and really understands where he's at. And I think he's going to use that as his stepping stone to get better. But all in all, we can't really hope for one of these pitchers. There's the argument saying, oh, we got to hope that Freeland's better than Gomber. We got to hope that both of these guys take steps back in the right direction next year. And the thing that's a good upside for Austin Gomber still is just turned 30. Kyle Freeland, on the other hand, also is going to be 31. These two guys are still right on, they might, in terms of age-wise, are in the back of that prime, but still should have plenty in the tank to help this Rockies team. If the Rockies are going to be a surprise team next year in any capacity, or if they're even just going to raise our eyebrows as Rockies fans, these two guys are going to lead the way. But there's just something in me. There's just something in my gut. There's something in my heart that tells me that Kyle Freeland is going to take the steps needed to limit the damage and get back to doing what he does well and benefit greatly from having a full season of really good defense behind him. I think one of the things for the first part of the season last year and for a bit, because the home runs and walks and the other issues certainly were on Freeland, but I really do think Kyle Freeland has been one of the most unlucky pitchers in the game, and definitely was not benefited from the lack of good defense the Rockies were playing at times last year before switching it up to the younger guys who made them a better defensive team. So I'm a little more confident in Freeland next year. I'm confident in his abilities, but at the end of the day, the Rockies are going to need both of them to step it up. And the best thing that they can do for the both of them, we got to limit the home run ball. I really don't want to see a walk or a little dink single leading into a 2-run shot. That happened too much to the Rockies in 2024. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for joining us here and making us your first listen of the day. Hey, don't forget that Locked On Sports has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And folks, head on over to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It really, really does help. If you're looking for your second listen of the day, why don't you go check out the Locked On MLB podcast or Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs. Got you covered. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.